Welcome back to another episode of Titans of Now. Titans is a showcase of ServiceNow personalities that have punched above their weight and elevated the ServiceNow community. Titans of Now is brought to you by me, Robert the Duke Fedoric. If you want to see what I'm up to, check out my website, theduke.digital. Here you'll find all my CJ and the Duke episodes, links to my YouTube content, and my upcoming course, Hired, the definitive guide to profiles that win ServiceNow jobs. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Titans of Now. In this episode, I am very pleased to announce an absolute baller in the security space in ServiceNow. He is a security and ID management guru. He is a 3-time Dev MVP. He is a 4-time knowledge speaker, and he's a moderator on our favorite Slack channel, SN Devs. Ladies and gentlemen, Jarod Mundt. Jarod, so good to have you here, man.
It's good to be here finally. Thank you for the invite.
And you've been dodging me, but I got you. So everybody knows the game. We start at the start. How did you get your start in the ServiceNow world?
So I was a team lead at a large agricultural customer, and we did not have ServiceNow. We had about 4 different fulfillment systems. One to track software, one to track hardware, one to track mobile devices, and of course Remedy to track incidents and change. So when we implemented ServiceNow, I was an instant power user on the platform, fell in love with it from day one, and grew out of the power user into the administrator, into the developer, and yeah, so that was around 2014 in the Calgary era of the platform.
Okay. And what was your background before you entered? Were you a tech person or?
Yes, I had been in infrastructure management, desktop architecture, managing 10,000 workstations with group policies and scripting, a lot of PowerShell prior to that. And then also going way back into the early 2000s, when I was still in the US Air Force, had been a webmaster and database admin and some other things. So when it came to ServiceNow with the CMDB, discovery, it kind of put all those skills together of knowing the network layer, the desktop layer, and I've never been professionally trained in computer science or programming, but I've just put in the hours of tinkering over the years.
Which is really surprising because I still get a lot of people questioning me about like, hey, should I get a master's in computer science, or should I take this dev boot camp before I start learning ServiceNow? And I keep telling people when it first came out, it's not like these companies said, get me a master's of computer science, to put in front of this application. They were just like, install this ticketing tool fast. Who's the most accessible, the most available, right? And you just, a generation of us just had to learn it.
It is. Yeah. It's true. Copying and pasting JavaScript from Stack Overflow or Community. Mm-hmm. And see if it works in a PDI, and then, hopefully understand what it's actually doing before you move it into a customer instance. But that's how I got my start, because there wasn't there was no Now Learning. There was no boot camp. It was just, put the scraps together and make it work.
So besides the accolades that I introduced you with, how might people know you in the space?
So in the ServiceNow space, they might know me from conferences and just, the general channel, mostly out on SN Devs, hopping into any threads that have to do with OAuth, integrations, security, platform internals, troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. But locally here in Colorado, people may know me from the local lockpicking and hacker scene. We do some local, DEF CON and hacker-related local meetups. So it's, I guess in general, I'm kind of drawn to building communities, regardless of what the topic is.
So you're into lockpicking?
I am. That's one of the local things when we meet up at the Starbucks. Spread out some sample locks and teach people. It's just like a Rubik's Cube. It's just a little bit more eye-catching to see somebody doing that.
I'm not saying this is a thing, but you are now the 3rd Titan on Titans of Now who is into lockpicking as a hobby. Take from that what you will, folks, but there it is.
It is. I think it's just, it indicates the hacker mindset, and not hackers in like breaking stuff, but hacker as making it work by any means necessary, right? Just trying and trying and trying and trying and hitting it from different angles. And, it works. I don't know why it works, but okay, now let's figure out why it works. Just that mindset. So I'm actually not too surprised that there's more than a couple of us out there.
True enough, right? And is that hacker mindset, how does that relate to your ServiceNow work? Like, what parts of the platform do you most resonate with? Is it that security and vulnerability and platform side?
So yeah, early on, going back a couple of years to the Geneva, Helsinki era when SecOps was brand new, I jumped in with both feet on there. Luckily, I was at a partner at the time that we were getting some good business with those early products. And I chose those not because of the product itself, but just because I was getting to work with the security team at, some pretty cool large organizations. And I thought that was kind of that was the gem, not the product itself. But within the ServiceNow space, the part I like most isn't any one particular application, right? Like CSM is great, HR is great, security incident response is great. Behind the scenes, they're all very similar. And so I would maybe I should update my job title and say like reverse engineering specialist, because really that's where, when something's broken or another dev has a really hard problem and they can't get it and they come to me, we just open it up. We start following the app, from what we can see until it, goes off into Java Rhino land and we can't see it anymore. But, take a couple years ago, I was on a live coding happy hour, and we were doing exporting of update sets and integrating that into a flow designer so we could use Integration Hub and send it up to GitHub. That was just reverse engineering. What happens when I click on this export to XML button? Okay, well, it's a UI action. What does that do? It calls a processor. Okay, what does that do? It calls this other thing, which calls this other thing, and so on. So just learning how the 50 layers of the platform work by reverse engineering common everyday buttons that we use all the time. And I think that's given me a leg up on, the reputation for being able to troubleshoot hard problems, and just kind of, that has translated into getting a lot of points, plus points out there on SNDevs, which is translated into the Dev MVP program, which is translated in, it's kind of this cycle of knowledge.
I think people sleep on the ability to troubleshoot and good troubleshooting versus great troubleshooting. And I've been in this kind of industry at least for 22 years. And it just kind of dawned on me like this past quarter, just how difficult it really is, right? Because what we make is effectively invisible. It's not invisible. It's just like the next best thing to invisible, right? Like if you were a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer, you could like look at the parts of the things that you're going to make, and then you can see the thing, right? I designed a car. I designed a carriage. I designed a bridge. Like there it is. There's all the materials right there. But the best we get is looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of text, one page at a time ever. Right? It's such a weird thing to manifest. That's kind of part of why I nerd rage all the time about solutions that have no documentation. Sorry, it's your show, bud. What do you think?
No, I agree. And if you like me, we're doing this stuff back on, call it Istanbul, and long ago. And then actually you and I in 2020 co-presented a script debugger session at CreatorCon, and tools like that just kind of speed up the process, right? You still have to have that mindset. You still have to kind of know how things are connected together, but the tooling is getting better along the way.
No
And
doubt, man.
so,
The log points and break points and just being able to like drop that into prod without, you know what I mean? Like you could just finally we can troubleshoot from prod from the instance where it's actually happening. By the way, do you have the link for that? I cannot find that video we did together anymore.
I may have it downloaded somewhere. I'll have to check.
Yeah.
But
so we're going to check on that, folks. And if you want to see our co-presentation on log points, just check in the description below. If we found it, it will be down there. One thing I get a lot of positive feedback on is the war stories, the times where people, in the Titan position, have felt like their backs were against the wall and they weren't going to make it. Do you have any of those?
Probably a couple every year over the past. That's actually one of the blessings of taking on a higher position, of being an architect level or a senior developer, or even like putting on the hat of an engagement manager. You get away from the stories and the QA side of a project, and you get to see a little bit behind the curtains of what's going on with the SOW negotiation, or you see the customer who's visibly angry with the partner or whatever, because of either a misunderstanding or a delay or whatever. So those are kind of cool to see the raw, how the industry works behind the curtain. But technical wise as well, when actually there was a large MSP, so they were in the big domain separated instance. They were moving a variety of other systems into the CMDB, and our project was putting a scripted REST API in front of it. So they made a decision early on to not use the table API, and but then they jumped ahead a couple of steps, and they started to have a team in India building part of it, and two different partners domestically in the US building a part of it. And so everyone was using different naming conventions. Everyone was using different logging styles. Everyone was doing different, versions of Glide aggregate and everything. So pretty quickly, it was just chaos, right? And the QA team was having to learn how to test these three different styles. And then the security team jumped in and said, hey, you can't use basic authentication. You have to restrict it to OAuth 2 only. And actually, the more I think about it, a lot of the projects didn't go off the rails because of technical reasons. They went off the rails just because of either a lack of architecture or a lack of transparency early on in the project. And then understandably, you go burn a couple hundred hours of developer time, and then the customer realizes that they're not anywhere close to what they had in their head along the way. So maybe a shout out to all the good engagement managers and project managers, and making sure that the SOWs and the transparency is, if you're on a successful project and you never have these issues, it might not be because of the devs. It might be because of all the people, hidden early on in the process.
And how did you find your way out of that one?
That one, luckily, somebody saw a spark that I knew what I was talking about, and they reached out they kind of bypassed, 4 layers of contract management and reached out direct to me and said, what do you actually think we should do here? And I just bluntly said, hit pause, let's take a week and define some standards. And we did. It pretty quickly got back on track because a lot of that stuff was reusable. The way we were logging, the way we were, for example, checking the headers coming in to see what type of authentication was being used, and gracefully exiting if it was a basic auth header instead of an OAuth authorization header. So by doing that once early on, it let all maybe 12 different scripted REST API devs across the world just kind of piggyback on that and got uh, got back on track. So yeah, so I guess even on community like SN devs and the other ServiceNow communities is global, right? There's people posting all and helping each other out on all times of the day. But within a particular engagement, there's also, a community, it's a much smaller community of like 6 or 7 people, but it's the same sort of things apply, just transparency, being helpful, probably listening is probably, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't take 2 minutes to listen to what they actually want, they're not going to be happy at the end of the day.
Man, there's so many teachable moments in there. I think a couple of things you said that have resonated with the questions that are coming to me from the newcomers is there's two mindsets in consulting and contracting, right? There's the I have been told what to do, I had better do a good job of doing that, right? But then there's more of like let's sit back, no matter what I'm asked, let's just zoom out a bit and see what that is in context. And I encourage people all the time, say your piece. Say your piece. Most of the time in the business world, people are always just there to do the right thing, right? Everybody basically wants to do the right thing. And if at least you say, I don't think this is the right thing, or I think there's a better way we can do this, like 99 times out of 100, that is not going to insult anybody. You're not going to get slammed down because of that. It only makes you look like A, that you care, and B, that you have insights that nobody else had.
Yeah, that brings up another war story from, call it 2016 or 2017. So being one of the few ServiceNow certified people that also had a CISSP certification, that helped me get into the SecOps space, but also the platform encryption space, whether it's column level encryption, advising on full disk and database encryption, but specifically edge encryption, the big nasty sledgehammer of encryption options. So I was doing a edge encryption implementation, and they wanted to just lock it down within an inch of its life, right? Lock down short description, lock down work notes, lock down every single field on this. And so going back to your object to the customer, and actually one of the community members presented a virtual session at CreatorCon this year that talks about gracefully saying no to the customer. It talks about all the different ways to politically, Dave. Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to that, but check that out for CreatorCon 22, a session all about saying no. But when I did push back to the customer, I did it in writing, right? Coming back from that military background and defense contracting background, you always want to have a paper trail whenever you're, doing the right thing. So I did push back and said, if we do this, it's going to reduce the future opportunity to do integrations with your SIM or do integrations with your, other tools. And, they just very quickly said, don't care, lock it down, move forward as planned. So fast forward about 6 weeks, the account exec from ServiceNow gets wind that everything's locked down. And they are, of course, concerned about the long-term account value. They want to sell additional integrations. They want to sell additional projects, and rightfully so. So they reach out to me and say, why are you locking this down? You're going to hurt our opportunity to integrate. The customer's not going to be happy in the long term. And I dug back through my email and I said, here's names, here's dates. I totally agree with you, but here are the specific people that overrode my recommendation. And so, yeah, so definitely say your piece, but also take a quick screenshot of that DM or save that email into a separate folder that's not going to get purged in 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how important documenting stuff is, right? And I just don't get the aversion to it, having that trail of, the important decisions on any feature set. Yeah, sure, it's a pain in the butt to look at that for 5 minutes every day. Whoa. But when it matters, you will wish you had paid 5 times that price. Changing course a little bit, opposite direction, what would you say was your pinnacle of your ServiceNow experience?
The last couple of years have been really good to me. So like, as you well know, they have kicked off a developer MVP program. So I've been selected for that. And then they've nicely sent out some shiny hardware. You may have seen on LinkedIn. There's a few people who've really shared a lot about that. So just, I guess, being recognized for the community, that's been great. And even more specifically this year in person at Knowledge in New York City at the CreatorCon stage. The backdrop, instead of using stock actors and models, they pulled people from the community and put their faces up there. So when I was doing my in-person presentation on JSON schema validation, behind me on the stage was a 3-foot version of my face kind of looking back. So that was just pretty cool to be, recognized, but also to have real people from the community featured and not just the stock models as in past years.
If you change one thing, either about the product or the ecosystem itself, what would that be?
The top thing I think would be a little bit more transparency into licensing. At most organizations, there's 2 or 3 people that know exactly what their contract says and what the real impact of adding columns, adding tables, adding scoped apps is to that particular organization. So if that was a little bit more structured and transparent, that would help devs, architects, business analysts make good decisions for, and not accidentally make decisions that are going to cost the customer to step outside of their agreement. That would be the probably the biggest single quality of life thing that I would edit.
I couldn't agree more, actually. I've never been a harsh critic of the license model just because I always believe that if the solution's worth doing, it's worth paying for. But it's just that sense of, it's just not clear, right? It's just, when I go to pick up my car, I generally know what's going to affect the price, right? But I feel like there's a lot of people who are now instinctually going back to a place of fear. Like, I don't know what my license agreement actually says. I do know that there's something about tables and fields. So whatever we build, let's just not add tables or fields. And it stymies the building of solutions on the platform.
Agreed. Yeah. I think most organizations probably have a very positive ROI on their license. It's not about the dollars. It's just about the we spend way too much time talking about it and thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Then we probably need to.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. I usually open this up if you have a message or advice to the people who are new to the ServiceNow ecosystem and coming up.
Yeah, if you're new to the platform, if you're new to the ecosystem, whether you're transferring in from a different skill set or brand new to technology, you didn't miss the boat. So like the good times are still now. And so just remember that any decision that you make is not set in stone for the next 40 years. It's a question I get all the time, and I know you do as well, is what should I special in? What should my niche be? Which, should I do X or Y? Just pick one and learn, right? The same applies outside of ServiceNow. Should I learn Python or PowerShell? Well, just jump into one. A lot of those skills are transferable. So just don't try and be an expert on every part of the platform, in your first 3 months. Know that things exist, but just specialize in something and something that you enjoy in, right? Like Michael Jordan, when he talks about teaching kids basketball, like, what skills should I teach my kid, my sixth grader? Well, make it fun for them. And then they will pick up all the skills that they want over time. So same thing. Don't jump into ITOM, because it's hot and that's where the jobs are right now. Jump into something fun. If you love the UX stuff, spend your hours in the UX stuff. Make it fun, and the experience, the skills, everything else will come.
Wise words, man. Wise words. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Jarod Mundt, newest inductee to Titans of Now. Jarod, thanks so much for taking the time for me.
This is great. I'm finally glad that I got around to sitting down.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon. If you're a ServiceNow expert looking for better opportunities, but maybe your resume or LinkedIn profile isn't doing you justice, reach out to me via LinkedIn or the email pictured here, as I offer both career coaching and recruitment services. And if you're a ServiceNow customer or partner, you heard that right. Robert Fedoruk now does ServiceNow recruiting. With a 1,500 subscriber YouTube channel and mailing list, and thousands of LinkedIn followers, let's make sure your open positions get first go at the prodigious pool of ServiceNow resources. Reach out via the email pictured here.